I guess I'm going to display a screen, but so I thought I wouldn't need to prepare anything, and as I started preparing, I realized it would be good to prepare stuff, but we can wing it, and things will flesh itself out as we go. I think today.
As you wish. As I said, I'm half prepared, so yeah. I feel comfortable winging as well.
Yeah.
Your call.
Well, it's your call because it's your floor, but
no, well, yeah. Okay. How comfortable are you winging it? I'm comfortable, but I'm comfortable.
I'm fine.
You're fine? Okay.
Yeah.
I think let's then have you do it, because I think there's a benefit of both me and Steven are prepared next time.
Okay. So I started to write out the process. I sent a link to what I've been writing, but I didn't have time to finish. Basically, I want this to be an iterative process where we take it one small step at a time. I tried to write out what makes for a good use case for each iteration. And the basic principles would be, it's as simple and specific as possible, basically centered around a single user action or something like that. One way to look at that I started writing out is, like, as we go, we'll be building up a model. Like, maybe the first one just has a claim and a user, as I said, as an example. Each new use case should seek to reuse those terms. And only introduce as few new terms as possible, so we don't spend a lot of time haggling over definitions. In terms of definitions, when you use a term, the focus of choosing a definition and choosing a term should be focused only on what it means to that use case. So, the classic example is the claim. What does it mean? What does a claim mean? Well, if it's just a user entered a sentence into the system to try to prove something, then the claim just means the thing that holds the string that the person entered into the system, and that's it. It doesn't matter how people are interpreting it and so on. Those things should be fleshed out in later use cases. So another rule is, don't worry, and we said this last time, don't worry about future use cases and whether or not the design or the current use case is sufficient or will contradict future use cases. Don't worry about that. If we agree that the thing that the use case considers should be in the system, then let's go ahead with it. And what I didn't write down in the process, I didn't get to, and this is something we'll need to work out, is when a use case is proposed, the main question there then becomes, is this a use case that should be in the system? There's a few things that need to be haggled over. And it's essentially, yes, we want the system to do this. No, this has nothing to do with the system. Or, some people agree, some people disagree. We might accept considering it an optional thing. We got stuck on the user use case with Steven because there was the question of, well, what is a user? We don't, what if I want the user to be coming from different places and that sort of thing. As little as possible, we should not haggle. Little as possible, we should haggle over that sort of thing and not worry about it, because you can modify it by a later use case. If you want someone somewhere to be able to type into the system a claim, an opinion, then that makes sense, right? I know that's going to be very confusing and sticky, and I haven't worked out. I haven't even worked out how to avoid that problem. It's going to come up, so we're going to have to figure it out as we go. But the idea is to get forward as much as possible. And you know, Stephen's concern about what do you call them?
Bounded domains.
Bounded domains. Yeah, I didn't sleep well last night, so yeah, bounded domains is another thing. These are things that should come out in the discussion. It's like, you know, I think this needs to be in a separate layer. Is essentially actually saying, I think this needs to be optional. I think the system should, for example, store the data for this, but, you know, perhaps the data should be entered somewhere else, that sort of thing. I haven't even laid out whether the purpose, there's a second question, is the purpose to design a monolithic system everybody's going to go into, or is it to design an interchain format, or is it to design something totally federated? This is also questions that I think should only come up when we see that split as, I don't even know where to say we see the split.
Well,
isn't it part of understanding the use case? I mean, if I understand the use case driven approach, but if you take one use case at a time, isn't it like fully understanding what that use case represents? Maybe.
It is, but it's also, so it will be part of the discussion.
I think the question is federation, or like there's a set of use cases related to federation. Are these acceptable use cases? And the notion of optional use case, and this is why I'm a bit on the edge about this, but let's try to go around and see where it goes. I'm willing to go through the exercise, but it will end up being, well, optional. Does it mean it means it? Optional means it has to be possible. So if I understand it, so has to be nothing in the design that prevents the optional layer to be added.
Correct.
Yeah.
But there's ways to also like what I think is, you know, we need to agree on the next use case. And if we see a use case,
that helps.
Right, but if we see a use case that some people think it's required and other people think is optional, the process is, let's table that one. Remember it, let's table it, and let's choose one that everybody agrees should be in the system.
Okay. Start with consensus.
Yeah, at this point, we're not ruling anything out. Period. That's the process. Nothing's ruled out. Nothing's defined optional. It's just what's the next use case that we think most people will agree on. And then when we hit it, which we'll hit it hard, then we can have that discussion.
Right. And you know, to some degree, we can maintain a list of use cases. I think we should, but those are only serve as kind of deciding what the next use case will be, which isn't just pulling off a list. It's more like, let's sit and think, now that we've done this, what is the next one that makes sense to tackle, right, to add on?
I think it will make sense for us to sometimes vote something is not optional but out of scope. And if we all agree it's out of scope, it's out of scope. That will happen, hopefully.
Okay, so the other thing I didn't do is get a tool for doing the modeling. I'm just going to use the diagrams.net thing for Google Docs for now. I'd like to use the tool that Marc-Antoine showed us, because I think it's a better way to do versioning and so forth, but I'm not adept at it. So for real-time modeling, I'll use this, and then I'll, you know, with your help, learn how to translate that into it. And then once I get more familiar, maybe I can do it in real time. But for now, I'll be using diagrams.net. Okay, so let's begin. The first use case that I would propose is the one I proposed before, obviously, which is a user enters a claim into the system, which is a single line of text. I guess I need to.
Are we writing that down somewhere?
Yeah, that's what I want to ask.
I do. Well, let me share my
document
screen.
shared. I mean, I guess it makes sense. No.
Yeah. Where is the?
I think you should, what do you think about a shared document, Timothy?
I'll share it. Hold on a second. But right now, I haven't had time to organize. I don't know if it's going to be a Trello board or if it's going to be just a spreadsheet or something. But for now, I created a quick spreadsheet. I need to share my whole screen, I think. There it's desktop one. I guess that's it. Okay. You guys seeing my screen?
Yes.
Okay. This is a default that it just created for me. Okay. Let's share this. I need to share everything. This is what I'm dealing with.
So I understand the refactoring approach and all that, of course. I mean, that's also how I tend to work. But how, when the sort of refactoring, I mean, typically you refactor when you need some reuse or you need some separation of concerns or whatever. How does it translate from adding new use cases to doing refactoring?
A new use case could like turn over the architecture, and that is the refactoring, I think, right?
Yeah, each new use case, as with any new feature that you implement, changes the model.
You can add new constraints, so things have to be modeled differently, for example.
Yeah, and each one has its own impact. Sometimes it's easy to see how big the impact is. Sometimes it isn't.
So there a process of suggesting new use cases? Because already, I mean, basically on the same discussion in the last meeting, I instantly, when I see this first model based on this first use case, I fully can agree on that. But I already know basically that needs to be refactored because of other use cases. Is there then a process for me to suggest these use cases someplace, or?
It would be, yeah, it would be, okay, it would be at the moment that we choose a use case to discuss.
Yeah.
I think we should next tackle this happens. It's painful.
So,
a user enters a claim into the system.
So in theory, we should just be able to each add use case.
But we should all do it together.
Suggest a use case, yes.
Yeah,
but we're all gonna.
But we add one by one together.
Okay, one by one together. Yeah.
I don't know if it should be enters a sentence into the system as a claim. It's a single sentence is the simplest case.
I feel better, yes.
Does this sound like a good first use case, or does anyone have something else to propose?
That's good.
Okay. Does everyone understand what is happening in these use case? It doesn't. We haven't said what a user is, which means no attributes are implied, no roles, nothing except that there is a role called a user. And it's a person that enters a sentence and says, this is what I'm claiming.
Yeah, just to make sure, because there's many different use cases why you might want to do that. So, but this one covers simply that you add a claim without any context, right? So not
correct. Sound good? I need to share the.
Not even within an argument, correct?
No argument. It's not an argument.
Exactly. Okay.
Yeah. I'm doing the PUML in real time if you want me to be
So
secretary.
maybe we all look at the shared document and look at Marc-Antoine's screen.
That might work.
How about
What?
that?
That might work. That means you would share the screen. I've shared the documents. You would share the screen.
Yeah.
Okay.
You tell me what to type and I'll type it and we'll see what's the...
It might make everything faster than my computer.
Yeah, okay. So let me share screen.
Do I have, let me stop sharing.
Yeah, you have to stop.
There.
This one. Yes.
I'm even going to turn off my video just in case it helps.
Okay, does it work? You
Yep.
see? Okay, that's what I have. I noticed you had person instead of user. You'd like that better?
Person was a default thing that the drawing tool created.
Okay. Good. So that's...
I'm happy with the user.
Okay, so claim, sentence, user are 3 entities right now.
Well, I mean, user's kind of in there. We were talking about user. I don't know. Tim can clarify. I think he was saying that we don't even need an entity for user at this point. We just happen to say user because that's the format of framing the sentence, but it's not.
Well, I would say since a user is doing the action, that we should have a user. We don't need any attributes or definition of what the user is.
I think we do. I think we do, because that's exactly where my second use case would come in.
Well, that's the second use case, which we're not discussing now.
Right.
No, but then.
Okay, let me wait.
Point.
No, before we go any further. Okay, let's call us a person, a human being typed.
But I'm talking about this use case. Don't get me wrong. But in this use case, why do you want to model the user?
Because the question is, do we want the claim to know that the user was created by,
Do we want to model the creator?
The creator of the claim, exactly.
Or of the sentence.
and or the sentence. Actually, the first thing we probably do need to model is the link between the claim and the sentence. Do we agree they're distinct entities?
Yep.
And that they have to be modeled?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I would be fine at this point with the sentence being an attribute rather than class.
Okay, so let's start with that and we'll refactor.
Yeah, we'll refactor. No, not in the user, in the claim.
Yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
Wasn't looking.
I mean, if you want to be as minimal as possible, and I accept that, you're right. We don't need the user at this point. We would start with the use case. A claim is created in the system with a sentence, and then we take the user out of the use case, and then we can have a separate use case that explains why you need to know the creator. Yes. I'm okay with that.
Yeah,
agreed.
Okay, let's take user out. And I will change the wording to say a claim is created in the system. Closing this.
It also bypasses my concern.
Right. Oops.
Which is good. So it's one thing at a time.
Right. Claim is created in the system with a sentence. Does that mean we're done? Everybody good with that?
Yeah, now we're in the use case proposal step.
Yep.
So does each person, I'd try to want to limit it to one person suggesting the next claim if they want, I'm sorry, the next use case if they want to. Does anyone have a suggestion?
I would suggest like the next logical thing would be that we can call it a user, a person, a user views the claim. It's a CRUD sort of thing, but you have a human views the claim. I don't know if that adds anything to this.
Yeah, does it add it? Does it change them all? I would more say that the next logical thing, but we can discuss, is more that a user views claims, plural? Like, what are all the claims that are added to the system? Like, because if you later want to go to just plural.
Do you want to do then a user views
all claims in the system?
Views, yeah. All or a list of, or a subset of, well, we can start with all the claims.
But that doesn't change the model, right?
Narrow it down from there. No, it does, because at this point you need all the claims that the user created. At that point, it implies the necessity for a user, for knowing who created.
Oh, that, I did not understand that to be the use case. I thought all the claims in the system versus all the claims created by a user.
Claim collection is basically what I'm hinting at. Like, where do you model the collection of claims? That's what we're missing. And I want the use case to reflect it somehow.
I mean, it's a class diagram, and the classes can have more instances, right?
Yeah, in a class diagram, you may or may not need. It depends. If it's in a class diagram, you do often have a collection. You're right. In a database diagram, you don't care because you have access to the table. So it's
I just envision, and it comes back to what I called argument graph before, that we're always going to say a claim is added to the system, but added to what in the system? The system is the system the thing that you just added to?
Do we want to model the system?
No, but
as a singleton.
Maybe.
Yeah, the only purpose, the only purpose of having the list of claims as an object is if the list of claims itself has some kind of attribute. You know, are you going to have groups of lists of claims? Are you going to have, I mean, if for example, if it's the list of claims that were created by a user, then we would model it as a user object and a one-to-many relationship.
I think this is all going a bit too far, because like we're probably just looking at it as a collection of claims.
And we are not focusing on the use case either. So I think we may following up.
I think a better thing would be something concerning disambiguation of sentences.
Yeah, I was going to say the next.
Well, here's a okay.
So let me.
Then we've leapt head first into disambiguation.
Well, won't we make sure everyone has an opportunity to suggest a use case? So I haven't figured out how to phrase this use case, but I think it'd be most efficient to just go ahead and jump to arguments or negation.
I would say let's finish writing the one we had. We said we need to have access to all the claims. I'm doing it with a static function.
That was a proposed, that Stephen proposed, and it wasn't accepted yet.
It wasn't accepted. Okay, good.
Yeah.
So should we write rejected? I think we should have a rejected.
Not rejected. Because it's not rejected.
Tabled.
It's just
it wasn't clear enough.
It's not even tabled. It's just proposed, and we can have 5 proposed ones, and one will be accepted. So Stephen proposed one. I'm proposing, a claim can be added.
We should still take them down. We should still write them down, because even if we choose one of them, we may want to come down to one of the other ones.
I mean, I'd suggest that people write them down in the spreadsheet, and we just have a column for whether they're accepted or not.
I'm okay with abstaining from this one, because it's not a clear use case. It's more like I want to model this shit, but it's not tied to a use case. So
okay. So do I remove this static thing I put?
Yes.
Done.
Okay, so one proposal is a user views the list of claims they created. Another proposal
let's write that one down.
Okay.
We need a status column.
I think it's read only. At least I cannot edit.
Oh yeah, I don't have edit rights.
Oh, let me change that. Hold on. It says viewer here. I don't know if this will do it. Or if I need to send a new link. See if you have edit permission. If not, I'll send a new link with edit permission.
And edit.
No, you need it's a new link. Ah, I did the reload and I'm still read only.
Yeah, same for me.
I propose we use capital letters for anything that's like a class that is already defined in the system or proposed as a class. I don't know if we need to do that. But...
And I know I'm not phrasing mine right, so I need your help, but I'm trying to.
Oh, you just overwrote.
Well, oh, I didn't see anything being written. I
Yeah.
think the computer's so slow.
User, that's right. User views. Have created.
I'm still read only, so I'll write in Slack my proposal. How's that?
Let me give you a new link.
Yeah, please.
Tim, did you make this in the folder? In the regular drive folder?
I think I put it at the top level of the CD folder.
Okay.
So I think people who are, so which means Marc-Antoine and maybe Felix are not members of
I'll go in and
this canonical debate. We'll see.
Yeah.
Anyway, you should be able to edit now. I've changed the permission on the link. See if that worked for you.
Yes, thank you. Okay, so let me.
Nope, they are not there.
In regards to the proposed use case, a user views a list of claims I've created. I think this is a nice example of a use case we probably shouldn't prioritize because it implies that users can create claims, whereas that's not actually a use case that's been completed yet or even proposed. Does that make sense?
I mean, right now we can create claims.
Yeah, so
claim is created. It doesn't say a user creates a claim. Two different things.
right. So then I would do a user creates
Exactly.
a claim.
Exactly.
Right. So maybe that is the next one. Maybe that is a good next candidate.
Well, I would argue it isn't, but we can discuss that.
I would also argue it isn't. I think it's either, I like either negation or disambiguation.
Agreed. Because they focus on the model and not on the system.
Yeah,
Did
I'm proposing a user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning. I mean, I would start with equivalence and then move on to negation, but negation's fine too. Let's add it. User asserts that a claim is the negation of another claims. And by the way, I'm saying asserts, and really that means claim.
Yeah, you're saying more. You're also saying a user again, and again,
I am.
There's a user. So.
Oh yeah, I am. I always am. For me, nothing happens without human agency.
So then you are actually arguing we should introduce a use case for users first, right? Because otherwise you cannot do this. Which is, doesn't you seem to be aligned with that?
I mean, the thing is, there can still be a user who uses the user interface and writes into the database without the database having a user table.
That's correct. This is a separate argument. That's a good point. I mean, the question is, when do we need to have this user provenance recording? And that's
when it's either like some association like creation or other ownership, or when we introduce roles or other things that require some sort of unique identity. So we haven't got.
Yeah. And this is where yeah, exactly. When we have basically priority between those claims, right? When I say a user asserts that a claim and another user disagrees, and then there has to be.
If you want to retain provenance, I kind of like the passive voice that it implies you're not interested in provenance. You don't care who does it, whether it's an
That's
AI
why we
or a user.
only have anonymous users right now, and everybody can modify anything with just one link, something like this.
Okay.
I think that's a good assumption. And if, I mean, it's fully fine to say we need to model users, but then we need to introduce use cases where users become modeled. And whether it's through a user created claim or whatever, I don't really care.
No, and it, yeah, but you know, the notion of use case does imply user persona, right?
Yeah, which is fine. So, but it still doesn't mean the user has to.
I agree totally.
Yeah, until it's absolutely needed, we put
But-
it.
but
So
what
let's
I'm
pick a use case
No,
now.
but what I'm saying, one second, I agree that the table is another concern, but I'm saying expressing it in the use case definition. The persona is part of the use case definition. It's part of the sentence, even if it's not part of the model.
Yeah, for me, it's perfectly fine to write a user does something in the use
So
case.
And ideally, we should have persona.
Here's the thing is that a user creates a claim is not any different. It doesn't impact the model at all compared to a claim is created in the system with a sentence. There's nothing a user creates a claim adds, because we haven't said that the system needs to remember who created it. Right.
All depends on what the system is and how you interpret it. But I mean, okay, as long as we don't add a user into the model, or we add, then I can live with that phrasing. But I just know from past discussion that a user asserts that a claim is a negation of another claim entails so much more than just that the system can represent equivalence.
Yeah,
I mean, the user can still do it in front of the computer and somehow uses the user interface to do this, show this equivalence.
Sure.
Yeah.
If we can agree on that, but I'm saying it's two things. For me, there's one use case where you actually monitor that there's a user that says, hey, I find that these two, I assert, and you want to track that. And the other one is the result of that. And that's what I call it. We're not going into that. Okay.
No. It's absolutely worth going in, right?
That's the exact distinction in the bounded context.
I think we're getting, we're going in circles here. We need to just pick a use case.
Yes, and the model.
Propose them. Let's pick one here to model.
Yeah, I'm proposing the equivalence, but that's my proposal.
I'm good with either an equivalence or a negation.
I'm fine with either as well. Give or take the interpretation of the use case, but we'll figure that out while modeling.
Bentley? No opinion?
I'm okay with either. Do we have a negation suggestion already up there?
The last, line 7.
Yeah, it's number 7. Let's do negation.
And is negation, okay.
Now we discuss, wait, a user, no, actually, I would prefer two claims are equivalent in meaning, because,
exactly.
Yeah.
It's lighter.
Because a negation is essentially, to me, a more
The opposite of
advanced
that,
version of equivalent.
Yeah, that's why I was going to say, let's start with this, which is a bit lighter in impact than negation.
Okay.
Baby
A
steps.
user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning. So there's nothing that implies in here that we need to know the one that is asserting.
No, correct.
What this use case, the only thing it adds to the model is the notion, a relationship between two claims that is equivalent.
Yep.
Not necessarily. So that's one way. What is equivalent to sentences or to claims? Because the alternative way we've modeled it before as well would just be to have a collection of sentences that are all equivalent in meaning.
It says the claim, and it's using the nomenclature. But use cases, that's the point, is use cases should be written using the terminology that is already in the model as much as possible, so we don't have this confusion. And it says,
there's two options. I model both because I agree. And I think they are both needed, but that's a divergence between me and Stephen. But let's model both and then we'll decide. But I want to show them.
Before we start modeling, this is what I meant by interpretation of use case. Like, is a user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning the same use case as user asserts that the sentence of one claim is equivalent in meaning to the sentence of another claim. Is that the same use case?
No. Okay. Yeah. The use case as written is the user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning, right? I don't think we don't need an association class here. We don't need a class that says claim equivalence. We don't need it. For this use case, we do not need it. All we need is a relationship from one claim to another called equivalence in meaning.
Okay, so what you're proposing, okay, that was a third way, which I don't believe in, but I'll write it. Claim.
Well, no, but yeah, but this is why it's iterative and how we don't get stuck is we haven't talked about whether or not that can be disputed. We haven't talked about the process of dispute. We haven't talked about any of that. We've only started, somebody says these two claims are equivalent in meaning. That's it, that's the use case. And all you need for that is a relationship from one to another.
Yeah, but
if you want to talk about then what happens.
To understand the use case, is the use case trying to capture a model that somebody said they're equivalent and somebody else can say they're not equivalent later on? Or is the use case actually that the model captures that they're equivalent, which are two separate use cases?
As I understand it, it's the model it captures, but it still can mean the user using this anonymous user interface.
Okay, if you model, choose how, so now you want to model from one claim to another. You want to say one claim is equivalent to another claim. Does that imply that there is also a relation from, is this a bi-directional relationship, or how do you model this? Like if one claim is equivalent to another claim, does it mean the other claim is equivalent to the former claim?
Depends on how you encode the graph in the database.
No, this is the use case. I'm talking use case.
I would imagine, I mean, equivalence is not unidirectional, right? Equivalence is bidirectional.
Exactly.
Which is so
why, in my opinion, isn't this just a set of sentences?
That's a different way to model it.
There's many ways to model it. Basically, we agree there's a many-to-many relation. We can either model it as here's the materialized equivalence. That's one way.
And I'm fine with modeling.
No, but that doesn't make sense. No. That does not make sense.
Let me.
Wait, I'll explain why. Okay, go ahead.
And the other way of modeling is to have a claim equivalence class which owns all the claims. Those are the, I don't know of any other way, so I'm curious. How would you do it?
I think it depends on cases which will follow which model you pick.
Yeah.
And I think that's why you have a preference.
But I think, Tim, you're saying my model doesn't make sense, so let's go through that. I think both those models are good. I can think of another, but if you disagree, let's go at alternative models.
I think we need to get used to designing as minimal as possible, right? Based on the use case. And the minimal way to incorporate this use case is there's a relationship between claims that is equivalent to. That's all it said. Is the user says these two things are
That's
equivalent.
what I said. Yeah, that's what I have here. That's agreed.
Yeah.
And then I'm saying it will be materialized as one of those two. And I'm not going into which
Eventually.
one, maybe both eventually, but I wanted to say, do you see a third way to model it? I don't. And do you think that those models are wrong? We're not arguing about premature for the use case, we're arguing about wrong, because you seem to say that.
But I think we don't have to talk about it. If we for now agree it's many-to-many with this representation, I think we need to, I'm fine with this. The only reason I see to model it differently is future use cases. And maybe that means that I need to introduce a use case that shows why this is not an actual way of modeling this.
Sounds
exactly.
Good. Sounds good.
Okay, are we good with this use case?
Good for me.
Okay, I'm going to mark this one as completed. What's the next use case?
And then let's do negation.
Think for a bit to try to put in words what I'm feeling.
Let me put in a reason to not do negation.
Okay.
I'm thinking about first two things, agreement and just what's the core thing. I mean, I think Kielo existed for a long time without equivalence or negation. I don't think those are the core pieces of an argument map. So I'd say some sort of thing about supporting or opposing other claims and go straight into argument. Just because that,
is the objection that you don't see the need for a negation form?
No, I'm saying that that's just not the priority.
But I think we can knock it out quickly and get it into the model and move on.
The last 10 minutes was extremely painful, and rather the complexity is going to get higher. So if you think we can do negation because it's just the opposite of equivalence, then fine, yeah.
Exactly.
But I'm just saying I wouldn't thinking it through, I wouldn't have even had that last conversation first. But go ahead.
I think we're getting used to the process, and I hope.
Yeah, and we are. Yeah.
So
I think if we do negation now, we'll knock it out real quick, and then negation will be entered into the model and the use cases for further discussion, but we don't have to tackle it at this point.
Let's go.
Yeah, so we have the sentence, and proposed model is claim.
So we're doing negation now? Okay.
Yeah.
I added a proposed one to highlight what I find problematic with the current model, but we can maybe tackle it after.
Yeah, I think this is going to be really quick.
Ipso facto.
I think we're done. Are we done? Okay.
Can create very inconsistent models with that.
Yeah, exactly.
Like in a triangle,
so
for example.
This is 1-to-1. So one claims a negation of another claim, but this is a conflicting model because a claim.
So far it's many to many.
Okay.
Many to many.
We haven't had a use case that says you can merge claims.
Okay, but
so the way the system is right now, you can probably create a bunch of claims and negations.
This model has a problem. Like imagine you have 3 claims, like a triangle, and then you add negation edges between them.
Just because it's impossible in real life doesn't mean it's a problem for the model. It's a simple model. It's going to have problems. We put a use case that exposes that problem, and then we solve that use case. But until that use case is proposed, we don't need to discuss it further.
Isn't the point of a model to prevent it from being wrong? Isn't that what you're modeling?
Well, yes, but step by step. So as you're going through, there will be gaps in your model, and you don't solve all the gaps at each step. You just solve the gaps in the use case. So we propose a use case that then breaks this model, and we solve it.
So let me try this with a use case. And what you're saying is there's a problem in that you have 3 claims that are all equivalent, and then someone indicates that a claim is a negation of one of those claims, but not the rest. Correct?
Exactly.
No,
so we can introduce a use case that says the system receives a request for the system detects that a negation relationship has been added to one of a set of equivalent claims and adds the negation relationship to the remaining claims. Yeah, right? We can do one that corrects the problem.
Back to your model to fix it, and you just have a claim which has a set of sentences which are all equivalent, considered equivalent, and then you're done. And then the model enforces it, which was my question.
So that's a proposed use case, not accepted yet.
I don't actually see a need for the system fixing the problem, because you can also have the system recognize automatically that a negation of one in a set of equivalent claims is automatically a negation of the others, right? It can do that detection. We haven't gotten to these use cases, but I don't see a problem in that.
I think the underlying question here is, what do we do when a model can contain inconsistencies, incorrect constraints? That's what we're talking about. We noticed, Felix correctly pointed out, that there's invalid there's constraints you want to constrain that are not able, they're not modeled properly. What do we do?
Yeah, I don't know if we need to do it as a use case or as a proposed constraint, just as a separate, but
problem with the model.
Well, no, 1 second. I think that I don't agree with the assumption that all the constraints can be modeled in UML. I'm saying
correct.
Yeah, no.
Yeah.
I'm saying in this case, there's a constraint on negation. It's anti-reflexive, symmetric, anti-transitive. I would put it as a comment on the UML, saying these are the constraints on negation.
This is also fine for me. Like this says, okay, it can only be correctly modeled if these constraints are enforced.
Yes.
But in this case, as Stephen points out, there's probably another way to model it directly. But if at least this is
stated,
as you pointed, this is stated, I'm fine with that as well.
I can add a note if you want about this.
We should just be aware of it, that if these relation properties are not enforced, then we can have inconsistent state.
Yeah, and then the question is, how do you document that?
With a note.
So far, Marc-Antoine documented it. So for me,
it's a comment for now. I can make it a visible note. But
might I hear the arguments for preferring this way of modeling it over modeling it where you can't have invalid states?
I'm perfectly happy with alternative modeling proposals. I mean, I don't think there's a modeling proposal that will totally express the constraints, but that doesn't mean that this is the only valid modeling proposal.
That's not what I'm saying. I'm saying that there is right now a model proposal that better encompasses these constraints, this problem, this many to many to many to many, if you just have a claim that has a set of equivalent sentences.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
but that, no, I disagree. I disagree that's because...
Wait, please, Marc-Antoine, just write down what Stephen said and then let's talk about it.
Sorry, let's say that again. Let's hear that again. Sorry.
Please write down what Stephen proposed.
Yeah, but I did not hear it because I was looking at something else. Please repeat.
My proposal is to rather than model equivalence between claims as a relationship from one claim to another, to model equivalence as a set of sentences that are equivalent. So a claim has a set of equivalent sentences.
That was that proposals, right?
Right. And so my objection to that at this point, as adding that to the model, is we do not have a user adds a second proposed sentence to a claim. And it also doesn't resolve the case where two users create separate claims.
Isn't that exactly a user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning?
Yeah.
One specific interpretation of your use case there. That was my point. That's the exact, it covers the exact same use case as a user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning. Just the way you phrased it, you happen to model it one way or another, but the use case framing shouldn't dictate how it's modeled.
So what you're saying is, what exactly are you proposing happens when the user states that two claims are equivalent?
I would model that as a second sentence gets added, because if you phrase the use case differently.
No, but that's a user. No, so a user proposing two claims are equivalent is there are two claims already existing in the system.
Yes.
And the user says those two are the same. Those two are equivalent. That is not the same as a user adds another sentence to an existing claim.
Exactly.
Those separate things.
Which is why they are separate use cases. One incorporates.
So add that use case. Add the use case. A user adds a second proposed sentence to a claim. That's a separate use case.
One is a curation action. The other is a pure modeling action. I think we're jumping too quickly to modeling a user suggesting changes, if you will. We haven't even modeled how the result of these suggestions will be modeled. And that's what I would model as a claim having a set of equivalent sentences. And then there can be...
Yeah, but see, you're leaping ahead again to other use cases.
Not really, I think
one use case at a time.
Tim, no, Stephen is not. Stephen is just trying to fix inconsistencies with the current use cases. As I understand it, it's not a separate use case. It's just that a model that will also solve probably a future use case is useful to solve these inconsistencies, right?
What is the, okay, but what is the model for a user says two claims are equivalent?
Equivalence assertion, I would probably model that if that's the use case you want to model. But we just said before that a user is only there to express a use case. I was arguing for passive voice because I don't want the user there yet. If you want to model the use case that a user asserts is similar, you should have a equivalence assertion, which has a user link to it and two claims. Where you say that user says these two claims are equivalent.
Small, I'm not. I think that we could delay adding the user link. We could just model the assertion for now. But I'm saying, as I said, there's two ways to model it. And I agree with you there otherwise. It's just either we model the claim equivalence or the claim equivalence class or both. Let me.
That's not my point. My point is, are we modeling the fact that the system knows and assumes these claims are equivalent, or are we modeling that a user asserted that they are equivalent? I'm saying these are two separate use cases.
It doesn't have to be a user. What we're saying is prior state was two claims. The change to the state is the two claims are marked as equivalent.
I'm saying we can punt the user question. I'm saying
sure. The user's not in here.
There's no capital letter on the user, or there wasn't in the way it was accepted. The user assert two claims are equivalent in meaning. So let's just look at the result. There's an equivalence relation or an equivalence class or both. That's what we're discussing. Let's postpone the user for now. But we're just saying in the system, we'll have some way of expressing that equivalence. I said there's a many-to-many relationship. Is it materialized? Well, obviously some way. Do we need to materialize it as a class in a class diagram? Open question. Do we materialize the equivalence class? Open question.
But there's, okay, as part of the process, if there's a simpler way to model the new addition, we should go for the simpler approach. Take the simplest model necessary, yes.
You can
because
always go
if
back.
you start,
you can always go back.
That's what refactoring
Timothy,
is,
that
the simplest.
A claim with a set of equivalent sentences is simpler than relations between entities?
They're two different things. We have not said that a claim can have more than one sentence. You can have that as a use case. A second sentence is added to a claim.
No, there, Tim, you're not.
You have, because the use case, if a user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning, what they're actually saying is that the sentence of one claim is equivalent to the meaning in the sentence.
That is not true. Again, you have two existing claims that each have their sentence.
Yes.
Your model does not support the case where those two are then marked as equivalent.
But the only thing that identifies a claim right now is its sentence. By all means of purpose right now, a claim is a sentence.
Right. Right.
So what does it mean for a user to assert that two claims are equivalent in meaning?
It means you take two existing claims and you create an equivalence relationship between them.
But how does a user determine that these two claims are equivalent?
That has not been brought up as a use case. The point of the use case is two claims exist and they are marked with an equivalence relationship.
I'm sorry, but you're just framing modeling choices as use cases now. But
okay, but okay, I can do it as a user doing it. The claims are there and a user comes and says, hey, those two are identical. I propose, we take it in future use case. I propose that these are equivalent. Let's discuss that. Okay, you can't do that by having extra sentences in a claim because those two claims already exist.
I know. So your use case is exactly that the user proposes that two claims are equivalent and you want to discuss that in the system. That is your use case.
No, it is not that the user wants to discuss that in the same way that the user creates a claim for the purpose of having arguments and discussing it, whether or not it's true, did not need to be stated. But that's the purpose of the user creating a claim. We know we're going there, but we didn't have to go there for the first step.
Okay, but
same thing here.
I think regardless, I understand, but then I would really I would model it as such. I mean, that's not the use case that I agreed on doing first. My interpretation of the use case was different. My interpretation of the use case was more a claim is considered equivalent to another claim in the system.
Okay, that's fine. The modeling is the same though. A claim is considered equivalent to another claim. That means you have two claim instances and an equivalence relationship between them. That's it. You can't model that by having two sentences in a single claim.
Nobody's speaking, Tim, stop. Nobody's speaking about having two sentences in a single claim. That's a perfect straw man.
Yes, Stephen is saying that.
No,
I would model it by having
you're
multiple
mishearing.
sentences
Sorry,
in a claim.
stop. You're mishearing.
Okay.
What Tim is saying is, when we have either an equivalence class, as you're saying, an equivalence relation, as you're saying, or an equivalence class, as I proposed, and Stephen is proposing as an alternative, either way, we have a group of claims that are considered equivalent by the relation or the class derived from the relation. And hence, the sentences and the claims are deemed equivalent, so the sentences are deemed equivalent. That doesn't mean they're attributed to the same claim object. It's just that they're attributed to claims that have been deemed equivalent by a relation or by a class. That's all we're saying.
Okay, does that change anything in the model?
What I'm saying is there's two valid ways to model the equivalence relationship. I'm happy to say.
But I'm going to.
No, let me finish.
Okay.
I'm happy to say we can table one of them for now. I don't mind that we start with the equivalence relation. Which is simpler is totally arguable. You're claiming this one is simpler. I think there will be a need for the claim equivalence class. I think it'll come later, and I think we have to build a use case for it.
Boom, right there is, okay, exactly. As dictator of the process, I am saying the simplest model handling the current use cases is the preferred modeling. The moment you justify, the moment you have to justify the other alternative model because we're going to need it in future use cases, that argument is invalid.
No, but here you're making an assumption that one is simpler than the other. I don't think that's true. I think we can still pick one arbitrarily. And I don't mind you dictating which one, but I'm saying it's not true that one is simpler than the other intrinsically. We're disagreeing on simplicity. But that's a detail.
So Timothy, just decide what we take.
Yeah, and so including negation, right? So just decide what the current model is for negation, equivalence, and claims in the system, I guess.
Okay, so for the use cases so far, it's claim with a sentence, and then those two many-to-many relationship arrows equivalent to and negation of.
Yeah, and
you consider this simple. Too many relationships you consider simple.
You won't, well, adding a class that represents the too many is no more simple, and you've added a class, so it's actually more complex.
At the end of the meeting, either way, I suggest you to implement this, and then implement the 3 use cases we have right now with actions, and then we can talk again.
No, I will not do that. I have other things to focus on.
Because
but I think that it's
the reason I don't model it like that, and the reason I think Mike Antoine wants also to introduce intermediate things is because this is not simple.
I think this is simple. It's just 2 different edges of a graph. That's it.
Yeah, but to implement in a model and to update your database.
In Java, each has an array. In Java, you have an array of claims called negations, and you have an array of claims called equivalents.
Oh no,
yeah.
because that's a double update. You have to update both instances whenever you add or remove. So you're introducing a dependency in the implementation.
But we're jumping into implementation.
It
doesn't matter.
It doesn't matter.
But I think I will agree, Stephen. I will actually argue. Let's separate implementation concerns. Let's see about conceptual simplicity for now, and we'll deal with implementation complexity as step 2.
Yeah.
I mean, as a corollary, I have no doubt we're going where you want to draw the model down.
Yeah, I think we will.
The reason I'm making a point of this is exactly that I want us to adopt the discipline of keeping it totally as simple as possible until we need it. I want to break the habit of thinking too far ahead.
But it's not thinking ahead. It doesn't even need.
It is thinking ahead.
Yes. Right now, this model needs like a note of anti-reflexive, symmetric, anti-transitive, which I don't even know what all of that means. But
you need that in the other one.
These many-to-many relations.
You need that when you add the class as well. You need the same thing. You're constraining the relationships, and you can't constrain the relationships by just adding a class and breaking off the arrows into an intermediate class. That doesn't change the need to note those constraints.
Okay, but the constraints are there. Okay, fine.
Okay, like Steven, if you don't understand the constraints, like for example, anti-transitive is like if A is a negation of B and B is a negation of C, then A is not a negation of C. That's simply what it says.
Yeah, anti-reflexive means A cannot be a reflection of itself, and symmetric means if A is a negation of B, B is a negation of A.
Symmetric.
Okay.
Simple term.
Okay, I'll look them up after.
All right.
Sorry,
All right.
I'm using jargon here. Apologies, but
I think as long as the jargon is explained, it's fine.
These are
because
standard
it very compactly
mathematical.
covers the concept.
What did I want to say? I'm not happy with the way the note is drawn, but I'm still looking for a way to get that a bit better.
It seems like it should be like embedded in the class or something. Oh, it's on the relationship. That's why it'll get.
Yeah, I want it to be in the relationship, not on the class. And at some point, I think the relationship will be materialized, and that'll be something else. The other thing is, frankly, I would put the negation on the claim equivalence class. And that's why I would put the claim equivalence class now. I wouldn't put it on the claim, personally. But I can't justify it yet. So I think, frankly, for us, Stephen, the exercise is to come up with a use case that justifies the claim equivalence class.
Exactly.
Well,
exactly.
I added one that I have no clue how you want to do it, but I added a user asserts that two claims are not equivalent in meaning. Is that something we want to model or not?
I would.
It might explain my current understanding of the user asserts that two claims are equivalent in meaning, because I'm still not certain I fully understand what you guys mean by that.
Wait, are you saying they pick two random claims and say these things are not alike, or are they responding to an equivalence relationship by disagreeing with it?
Good question. I would have said the former.
More like I want to hear how you think about that to better understand how you interpret the current one that you implemented and modeled.
Well, this is just thinking about system needs. Like I see no need in the system to declare two claims are not equivalent. However, I do see a point in disagreeing with saying two things are equivalent.
Okay.
Makes sense.
So then this is not a priority. Yep.
But there is another priority, which is a user disagrees with an equivalent with that two claims are equivalent.
A future use case. Right?
Are you guys continuing? Because I need to leave.
Yeah, let's go ahead.
We can stop now. Oh, you want to keep going?
I think, yeah, I'll just finish that sentence and let's stop. I think it's a good point to stop. User disagrees.
And then we'll choose another use case. Well, next.
We'll choose it next. Yeah, next time.
So are y'all going to take over Thursdays or Fridays? Right. I mean, so
are we switching now so that Tuesdays are bottom-up days and Fridays are your days, or?
I don't have a strong opinion on switching permanently or switching just for this week. I think it doesn't matter much.
Then let's switch permanently.
Yeah.
It'll keep the cadence going. Yeah.
Okay.
That's cool.
Thanks, everyone.
See you on Friday.
See you on Friday.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, guys. I'll write up everything I can. I'll get better prepared for next Tuesday.
Do you want me to put this in the GitHub?
Yeah, I do. I would very much, and I'll try by next week to learn how to do it. I don't need to do it myself necessarily. Maybe it's better you do it, so I'm not even more a dictator. Things have to be discussed more. But anyway, I'll learn how to do it.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
All right, thanks, guys.